This single, fragile piece of parchment cost the British economy an inflation-adjusted $3.6 billion. It looks like a masterpiece of cartography, but every opera house, every domed cathedral, and every gold mine you see drawn here is a lie. It never existed. This isn't just forgery, it's world-building. In 1822, a man named Gregor MacGregor didn't just fake a banknote. He forged an entire civilization. He created a fake currency, a fake history, and a fake army, then sold it to the world's smartest bankers. If you bought a bond from him, you didn't just lose your retirement, you paid for your own death warrant. 250 people sailed to this paradise, and most never came back. We analyzed the original 355-page guidebook, the shipping manifests, and the 1825 death records to reconstruct the anatomy of the fraud. I will show you exactly how one man rigged the London Stock Exchange. But to understand the collapse, we first have to uncork this specific bottle of whiskey. To understand the con, you have to understand the costume. When Gregor MacGregor arrived in London, he didn't look like a fraudster. He looked like a liberator. He wore the uniform of a Venezuelan general, fresh from the wars against the Spanish Empire. He claimed he wasn't just a soldier, but a cacique, a prince of the Mosquito Coast. In a society obsessed with hierarchy, he hacked the system by presenting the ultimate visual credential. He didn't ask for money. He granted you the privilege of investing in his kingdom. The bankers didn't see a man. They saw the medals, the sash, and the title. They saw a hero. And that was the first blind spot. But his most dangerous weapon wasn't a sword. It was a book. MacGregor published a 355-page guide called A Sketch of the Mosquito Shore, authored by a Captain Thomas Strangeways. It contained detailed soil analysis, diagrams of gold mines, and the architectural plans for the capital city. It was the ultimate proof of concept. The only problem? Captain Thomas Strangeways didn't exist. MacGregor wrote the book himself, plagiarizing old almanacs and inventing the rest. He then printed thousands of Bank of Poyais dollars, exchanging them for real British sterling. He legitimized the lie through the weight of paper. Why did the City of London believe him? It wasn't just the uniform. It was the math. In 1822, the British economy was stagnant. Government consuls, the safe bet, were paying a miserable 3% interest. MacGregor offered 6%. He priced his bonds to be just credible enough to be true, but lucrative enough to trigger greed. He launched a massive advertising campaign, targeting not just the rich, but the middle class. The fear of missing out spread like a virus through the coffee houses. They weren't buying land. They were buying a lottery ticket to a life they hadn't earned. MacGregor understood that you can't sell the same lie to everyone. So, he segmented the market. To the London elite, he sold yield, a financial abstraction, a piece of paper that promised effortless wealth. But to the desperate, he sold identity. He targeted his own people, the Scottish Highlanders. These were men and women displaced by the clearances, soldiers left behind after the Napoleonic Wars. To them, he didn't sell an investment. He sold a second chance. He reminded them of the failed Darien scheme of the 1690s, a national trauma where Scotland tried and failed to build a colony. He promised that Poyais was their redemption. He sold them land at 4 shillings an acre, cheap enough to be affordable, but expensive enough to feel real. He wasn't just a banker anymore. He was a messiah. Then, He closed the trap. MacGregor announced that the first ships were filling up. He published notices in the Times claiming that land prices would double next month. It was artificial scarcity. Weaponized. The Poyaisian legation in London was mobbed. People liquidated their life savings, selling family farms, cashing in government bonds just to secure a berth on the Honduras packet. They weren't just buying a ticket. They were buying an escape from the crushing industrial reality of Britain. They traded everything they had for a paper deed signed by a ghost. On January 22, 1823, the Kennersley Castle left Leith Harbour. 250 men, women, and children stood on the deck, watching Scotland disappear into the mist. They carried trunks filled with what MacGregor told them to bring: formal wear for the opera, heavy wool coats for the cool evenings, and tools for harvesting gold. They left behind their homes, their history, and their safety. As the ship crossed the Atlantic, they weren't sailing towards a country. They were sailing into a void. MacGregor stayed behind in London, counting their money. The dream was over. The nightmare was about to make landfall. When the Honduras packet dropped anchor at the mouth of the Black River, the passengers crowded the deck. They held MacGregor's map, searching the horizon for the white spires of the cathedral or the stone walls of the opera house. They saw nothing, just a wall of mangroves and silence. The captain checked his coordinates. He checked the map. He checked them again. They were in the exact center of the capital city of St. Joseph. But St. Joseph wasn't a ruin. It wasn't a ghost town. It was a hallucination. There were no roads, no cleared fields, and no welcome party. There was only the jungle, staring back. Denial is a powerful drug. For weeks, they refused to believe they had been conned. They unloaded their trunks. They put on their best clothes to greet the native workforce that MacGregor promised. But the workforce never came. The rainy season did. For weeks, the sky turned black and dumped boiling hot rain on their camp. Their silk cravats rotted around their necks. Their leather boots turned to green mold. They built huts out of mud and branches, huddling under palm leaves while holding deeds to 4,000-acre estates. The Princess of Poyais, a settler named Mrs. Hector Hall, sat in the mud, waiting for a carriage that would never arrive. Then came the silence, one by one. The settlers stopped working. MacGregor had promised a healthy climate, claiming the air of Poyais cured all ailments. In reality, the swamp was a petri dish for yellow fever and malaria. It started with the children, then the elderly. The Poyais fever didn't just kill you, it hallucinated you to death. The settlers lay in their flooded huts, clutching their worthless banknotes, shivering in 100-degree heat. There was no medicine. The medical kit MacGregor had sent contained only laudanum and bandages. They were dying of thirst, while drowning in water. The final insult arrived in April. A canoe appeared from the west. It wasn't a rescue party from London. It was George Frederick Augustus, the actual king of the Mosquito Coast. He walked into the camp of dying Scots, looked at their land grants, and asked who Cazique MacGregor was. He had never heard of him. He told them the deed was worthless paper. He told them they were trespassing. The realization broke the last of their sanity. They hadn't just been unlucky, they had been erased. The Prince of Poyais was a ghost, and he had left them there to rot. You might assume the story ends in the swamp. It doesn't. While the survivors were dying of malaria, Gregor MacGregor didn't go to prison. He went to Paris. And he did the unthinkable. He launched the exact same scam. Again, he opened a luxury office on the Rue de la Paix. He translated his guidebook into French. He even tried to sell the same plot of land, the one currently filled with the graves of Scottish settlers, to French investors. He wasn't a fugitive running from the law. He was a franchise owner expanding his brand. The audacity wasn't a bug, it was the feature. In 1826, he faced a French court. The verdict? Not guilty. His lawyer argued that MacGregor was just a dreamer. Misled by his own agents in the jungle, it worked. But the real immunity came from London. The British bankers, the men who lost millions, refused to sue him. Why? Because to sue him would be to admit they had been conned by a man in a costume. They preferred to bury their losses in the panic of 1825, rather than expose their own greed to the public. MacGregor had discovered the ultimate loophole. If the lie is big enough, the system will protect you, just to save face. Gregor MacGregor did not die in a prison cell. He retired to Venezuela, where his original military service was remembered and his fraud was forgotten. He was reinstated as a general. He was given a state pension. In 1845, he died in a hammock, surrounded by family, buried with full military honors. The man who sold a fake country, killed hundreds of settlers, and shook the foundations of the global economy, got away with it. And the map? The map of Poyais still hangs in a museum. A reminder that the world is not built on truth. It is built on what we are willing to believe.
The water is poison, the fever is high. We watch the bairns and the old ones die. MacGregor's in London, drinking his wine while we rot away in this tropical brine. Yeah. 3 crops a year, that's what he said. Now the dream is broken and the hope is dead. The paper is worthless, the ink is a stain. We're prisoners here in a hurricane. He's a chance to hire callous loon. Sold us a castle, sold us a tune. But then they